1980s, Universal had an idea to open a bigger, better, and more polished version of their theme park in California, Universal Studios Hollywood. The site chosen would be Central Florida, as they wanted to compete directly with Walt Disney World and offer something to the public that Walt Disney World was not offering at the time. So Universal set up a meeting with Paramount Pictures to create a joint partnership and create something absolutely huge that would indeed shake Disney. Paramount's CEO at the time was Michael Eisner, and his team decided it was not a viable idea nor investment, so the deal never went through, and Universal put all their focus back on their Hollywood park for the time being. Universal Studios Hollywood opened the King Kong Encounter in 1986, and it was an absolute smash hit which reignited the idea for the massive Florida project. So Universal decided, hey, f*** it, and went on ahead doing it solo. Before 1986 came to a close, they had purchased the land, construction had broke ground, and had announced to the general public that they were indeed building a theme park in Orlando, Florida, and calling it Universal Studios Florida. The property would contain a number of television and film production facilities, as well as a number of attractions where guests could, quote, ride the movies. About a year later, Michael Eisner, whose face always reminded me of a cake donut for some reason, was now the CEO of the Walt Disney Company, and they announced that they would be building a third gate at Walt Disney World. And the idea behind that park was very similar to Universal Studios Florida. Now, Cake Donut was in that meeting way back in 1982 when Universal originally pitched the idea to Paramount. Now this, rightfully so, off Universal, so they kept hush-hush about any other ideas pertaining to USF, claiming they don't want to give any more ideas to the competition. In 1988, it was announced that the kids' television network Nickelodeon had struck a deal with Universal and were going to occupy multiple buildings in the production area, and call that Nickelodeon Studios. They ended up producing a number of hit shows in that production area, and is arguably the golden age of Nickelodeon, and it all took place at Universal Studios Florida. 1989 saw Eisner and the boys complete and open Disney's MGM Studios before Universal finished their park. They obviously had a lot more money to work with and were able to complete the park on a much quicker deadline, but this also meant that Universal Studios was going to have intense, stiff, direct competition right out of the gate. Universal Studios was supposed to open to the general public by December of 1989, but due to numerous setbacks and various reasons did not meet that deadline. So it was later announced that the park would officially open on June 7th, 1990, which it did to great fanfare. The park originally opened with 5 themed lands: Production Central, New York, the San Francisco Amity Island area, the Expo Center, and Hollywood, and of course the lagoon sitting right in the middle of the park. The opening day attractions included the Fantastic World of Hanna-Barbera, a motion simulator ride featuring the f***ing cartoon characters from the Hanna-Barbera brand. Alfred Hitchcock's Art of Making Movies, which was a part 3D show, part live action, paying homage to the films of Alfred Hitchcock. The Boneyard, which was, a walkthrough of old f***ing movie props and what have you. The Murder, She Wrote Mystery Theater, I you not, a long show with heavy guest interaction. The Ghostbusters Spooktacular, a stage show featuring my guys, the Ghostbusters. Loved the Ghostbusters, obsessed when I was a kid with them. The Bates Mansion and the Swamp Thing movie sets. The Animal Actors Stage. The Production Studio Tour, which was a tram ride attraction that took you around all the production facilities. The Universal Horror Makeup Show, which is pretty self-explanatory and still going as of the time this video is being made. The day would always close down with a live stunt show called Dynamite Nights Stunt Spectacular, themed after, what else? Miami Vice. But I saved the best for last, as the big 4 anchor opening day attractions were Earthquake, the big one, which was a 20-minute ride which simulated an 8.3 magnitude earthquake. Dear God. Jaws, a boat ride which took you around Amity Island, the setting of the film, and gave you a close-up view of Jaws himself. E.T., which was a dark ride of the film with the same name, and is the last of the big 4 that are still in operation. But the most famous and arguably the flagship attraction of the early days of Universal Studios Florida was Kongfrontation, which gave you an up-close attack of King Kong himself. The first year was a huge success, so for 1991 we got a couple of new attractions. The Blues Brothers Show, a live stage show based on the film of the same name. The Wild 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 West Stunt Show, which has one too f***ing many wilds in it. The Screen Test Home Video Adventure, which was an upcharge attraction which gave guests the opportunity to star in their own 10-minute film. Street Busters, which was a crossover show featuring the Ghostbusters trying to catch Beetlejuice. Makes sense. But the big news of that year was the addition of Back to the Future the Ride, a 3D motion simulator based on the trilogy of the same name as you were racing through time trying to catch that scoundrel Biff Tannen. A huge addition at the end of that year was pretty low-key at the time, but has gone on to be quite significant. That was the debut year of what was then called Fright Nights, Universal's Halloween time extravaganza, which they have gone on to become beyond legendary for. In the following year, it was renamed to Halloween Horror Nights as it's known today. That year also saw Beetlejuice get his own show, as we saw the debut of Beetlejuice's Rock and Roll Graveyard Review. By 1993, Universal began toying with the idea of adding a second gate next door to Universal Studios Florida, an idea that they kept pretty hush-hush on for the time being. Also that year was the final performance of Street Busters, that Ghostbusters Beetlejuice crossover show. 1994 saw the removal of the Swamp Thing television set, and the following year saw the removal of the production studio tour. Also in 1995 was the addition of A Day in the Park with Barney, a live show featuring Barney and friends. It was pretty hot and happening at the time. 1996 saw a lot removed or closed down. That included the Murder, She Wrote Mystery Theater, the Ghostbusters Spooktacular Show, and the Screen Test Home Video Adventure. But also that year we got the addition of Terminator 2 3D. It was a 3D film mixed with live action performance. 1997 Universal dropped a f***ing bomb, and I mean that in a positive way, as they announced by 1999 they would open a second theme park to be called Islands of Adventure, Universal City Walk, which featured a number of dining locations, various shops, other forms of entertainment if you will, and an on-site hotel option called Portofino Bay, thus turning just one theme park into a multi-park resort to be called Universal Studios Escape. 1998 saw the removal of the Bates Motel and Mansion set, bad decision, but we also got a small expansion and a new ride. The expansion was the Woody Woodpecker's Kids Zone area, and the new ride was Twister Ride It Out, a simulation attraction based on the 1996 disaster film Twister, because disaster films were f***ing popular in the late 90s, man. 1999 saw the grand opening of Islands of Adventure next door. It was well received by the general public and helped boost Universal's reputation and popularity within the industry, and were now viewed as major players. Also that year saw the addition of a kids roller coaster in the park, the Woody Woodpecker Nut House coaster. The new millennium saw the addition of Men in Black Alien Attack, an interactive dark shooter manufactured by MTS Systems Corporation, and was an absolutely mammoth undertaking, costing $70 million to construct, but a very cool dark shooter. Also that year saw the final performance of the nighttime show Dynamite Night Stunt Spectacular. 2001 saw the Animal Actors stage get renamed to Animal Planet Live. 2002 saw the Universal Escape Resort get renamed to what it is known as today, the Universal Orlando Resort. Also that year, Halloween Horror Nights was moved over to Islands of Adventure for the first time. To cash in on the massive success that park was having, we saw the debut of a new show, Extreme Ghostbusters, The Great Fright Way. Pretty much an updated version of Street Busters, because it was Ghostbusters vs. Beetlejuice again. But the biggest news of 2002 was easily the closure of two opening day attractions, Fantastic World of Hanna-Barbera and Kongfrontation, bringing with it kind of a close to a chapter within the park's history. 2003 saw the addition of Jimmy Neutron's Nicktoon Blast, 3D motion simulator that occupied the former building of the Fantastic World of Hanna-Barbera, featuring cameo appearances by a number of Nicktoon characters. Also that year saw the addition of Shrek 4D, a 4D motion simulator based off the popular film series of the 2000s, Shrek, and the final performance of the Wild 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 West stunt show, and the closure of Alfred Hitchcock's Art of Making Movies. 2004 saw Halloween Horror Nights on an absolute roll, so Universal decided to run it at both parks for the first time. Also that year we got the debut of Revenge of the Mummy, a Premier Rides indoor launched roller coaster, occupying the former location of Kongfrontation. 2005 saw the addition of Fear Factor Live, an interactive guest participation show based off Joe Rogan's game show, Fear Factor. Also that year saw the final performance of the Extreme Ghostbusters Great Fright Way, and Nick Studios close up shop and head to California as they no longer needed Universal. 2006 saw the addition of Universal 360, a Cinesphere Spectacular, a nighttime fireworks show which had 4 huge circular spheres in the middle of the lagoon which projected images from popular Universal films. Also that year saw the closure and removal of Animal Planet Live. The following year saw 2 massive closures and removals. First being Back to the Future the Ride, which was much beloved by everyone and really helped put Universal on the map. And the other being Earthquake the Big One, which was rethemed the following year to Disaster. Also in 2008, we got a replacement for Back to the Future, and it was the Simpsons Ride. It didn't quite match the legacy of Back to the Future the Ride, but it is very much a beloved attraction in its own right. And to close out that year, we got the removal of the Boneyard movie prop walkthrough. 2009 saw the addition of Hollywood Rip Ride Rocket, a 167-foot tall, Mauer-built X-Car model featuring on-board music. A very awesome addition for the park and its skyline, and also probably the biggest thrill the park provides up to this point. 2011 featured 2 closures as we saw the removal of Jimmy Neutron's Nick Blast, and also the final performance of the evening nighttime show Universal 360. But that was replaced the following year by Universal Cinematic Spectacular, another evening nighttime show very similar to Universal 360, just with different screen effects and what have you, taking place in the lagoon. Also in 2012, we got the addition of Despicable Me Minion Mayhem, a 3D motion simulator based on the Despicable Me films, produced by Universal's animation department, DreamWorks. But absolutely no doubt the big news of 2012 was the closure of Jaws the Ride, and Amity Island as a whole, as it was rapidly aging and Universal decided it was time for a major change, and they had something huge in store to occupy those grounds. 2013 saw the addition of Transformers The Ride 3D, a 3D dark ride cashing in on the massive success Transformers was having at the time for Universal. Also that year we got the addition of Kong and Kodos' Twirl and Hurl, basically a Dumbo spinning attraction based on the aliens from The Simpsons. And where that ride was installed, which was near the Simpsons ride attraction, was a part of the Expo Center, but they just broke it off, added some more theming, and gave it its own themed area, calling it Springfield. 2014 was the addition of what was occupying the former Jaws area, and it was Diagon Alley, based off the immensely popular Harry Potter series, and an absolutely genius addition to the park. And coming with it, 2 badass attractions. Escape from GRINGOTTS, an Intamin-built indoor roller coaster also implementing some 3D effects. And the Hogwarts Express, a Harry Potter-themed train ride connecting Universal Studios Florida to Islands of Adventure. A genius idea. I think it's brilliant. 2015 was the park's 25th anniversary, and to celebrate, they removed 2 attractions, Twister and Disaster. 2016 was the final performance of Beetlejuice's Rock and Roll Graveyard Revue. 2017 was the removal of Terminator 2 3D, and the final performance of Universal's Cinematic Spectacular. But that year we got the addition of Race Through New York featuring Jimmy Fallon, yay! 2018 saw the addition of Fast and Furious Supercharged, a dark ride based off the Fast and Furious films, and a new nighttime show, Universal Orlando Cinematic Celebration. 2020 saw the entire country close down, and that included Universal Orlando, but it reopened within a handful of months, and coming with it, the Bourne Spectacular, a live-action stunt show based on the Jason Bourne films. 2021 saw the removal of the Fear Factor live show and A Day in the Park with Barney. And in 2022, we saw the closure of Shrek 4D, providing its final run. Universal is currently the #2 theme park operator in the world. With properties all over the world, they provide an amazing alternative to the standard. And sure, their theme park division may have started at Universal Studios Hollywood, but it was Universal Studios Florida that skyrocketed them to become major players within the industry, with a multi-gate, multi-hotel resort blossoming all around it. In the future, when people are going to look back at the history of amusement parks, there will be no doubt that Universal Studios Florida left a huge mark on the history of the business.